All right, so we get into the bottom and top frame finalization, and so the first part is the bottom frame, and basically you're going to see that we're going to be installing a lot of insulation and some top covers and bottom covers and so forth. So nothing too complicated, but we're going to run through this, and so the first step is installing the top insulation. All right, so the next step, I'm going to put the rock wool insulation in the front and the back, and just kind of stuff it down in there, make sure your wires are out of the way. So we'll get the front and back put in. This is the 615 by 115 rock wool panels. So we'll go ahead and get those in. All right, and then so we've gone ahead and put in the side ones as well. Be careful with the side ones because the dimensions here are 240 by 185, and there's another set of small ones here that are 240, but they're wider than 180. They're like 200. So so that's how those install in there. So we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so the next step calls for the top frame cover. Here it's aluminum piece, as it says, and it looks like it goes into these, they call these top frame cover connectors. Take a look at these, because one side of the holes are closer to the edge than others, and so it looks like actually the wider end goes in here, and then the side that's close to the edge is on the outside. So that's looks like that's the same for all of them. So we'll go ahead and get these screwed up. I use a flathead and 4/8 flathead. So we'll go ahead and get those 4 mounted on here. Okay, and then the next step, this cover drops down, and just like this, the countersink are up here, and then you get 8 more screws. Now I hope this lines up, because looking at it right now, it looks like it might be challenging. Okay, so what he doesn't tell you is these screws are not the same distance, and so these line up fine, but I couldn't tell why they were both shifted, and so when I rotated it 180 degrees, the metal frame, then everything lines up. So now I can go ahead and get that attached. It doesn't show on the illustration. It probably should, because there's a difference, but you can figure it out. Okay, and then we're going to take this top panel that we just assembled here, and it slides on top of here. You got the square nuts you got to put in these different locations. I've got them lined up now, and this extends out the back. You'll see how and I'll come over this panel here. Now previously I put this panel in and lined up these and got this fixed so that they'll drop down in there and line up. So we'll go ahead and get that top cover plate attached now. Yeah, so I'll have to be honest with you, getting this top cover on and aligned with all these holes, the corner holes, it's the unit, I would say, was just off by about, oh my goodness, probably about just a millimeter or 2, and so I had to loosen up some stuff and really get these to get all in. And then these are just so difficult to get to, the ones in the corner, because obviously the lid's not 90 degrees and these. So I removed one of these, just removed the lock, pulled it off, and then I was able to kind of get in that angled wrench in there and get them started. But it took a little bit of work. And I have to be honest with you, it is not an easy assembly. So there does seem to be a gap here, bigger than over here. I'm not 100% sure why. This looks like this piece maybe a little bent. I can see that it's got some, yeah, it doesn't 100% sit down on this. So I wonder if that's an issue. Looks like there's a gap there, and I'm wondering if we're supposed to be having gaps. So that will tell you a little something about what's going on here. Okay, I discovered what my problem was. This metal plate right here, this all assembly was attached before we set this thing on here. And what I found out was these obviously fit inside these middle brackets. And what a couple, this one was riding up on top of this, and this was actually on top of this. And what I found was these connectors, I need to loosen them up and allow this to fall in between there. And then that, now it all fits down and they're flush. So that created that problem. So it seems like, actually, to be honest with you, when this is assembled, you could almost assemble this like this. You set it down in there, make sure everything's good, and then you go ahead and put on your top plate here. So maybe that should be something that should be considered, but obviously something I learned during this process. All right, so let me get this back on and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, and then once you get that top on, then you can come back here and screw those in to those blocks on the back side. And then we go ahead and now we'll get the hinges inserted in here and get those installed next. Okay, the hinges actually install pretty easy. You just go down that slot there and then just get your square nuts aligned, and they install pretty easy. All right, so the next step is just putting on this back electric box cover. Right now I just put a couple socket head screws in there temporary. I may want to get back in there, so I'm just gonna just put a few in there. I still got to bundle up all the wires, but I want to make sure I don't have the heaters hooked up yet. It's a later step, and I'll want to do that, and then I can get all the cords organized a little bit better. All right, next step. Okay, I think the instructions are fairly explanatory. You know, I just cut the the front and back pieces in half, and you work your way up. It helps if you move your ball screw all the way down so you can work in here, and you just make sure all your wires are outside of that. And then on this front one, you know, cut in half, and then those are kind of going in between. So it's hard to see, but it's, well, there, you just want to make sure you're not pinching any of the wires, the heater wires, thermistor wires. So, okay, we'll go to the next step. All right, this next step, this is the bottom chamber cover, the centerpiece. You can see that it's routed out here on the edges. So, and then you just take the cable clip, and it looks like it attaches there with these M48 socket screws. So we'll go ahead and get that screwed up. Okay, and now that we've got this this piece assembled, it goes underneath the unit here. So it's going to kind of install up and under. We got to install some M5 nuts, and then some the button head screws up into there. So I'm going to go ahead and get the square nuts put in, and then we'll go ahead and get it mounted up. Definitely not a fan of how these install. I mean, we got to put M5 nuts in here and then attach. So this plate, I found it best if you just set that center piece, slide it in here, it fits and goes along these profiles, has cutouts, and then slide it up. Now what happened was, when I was routing a lot of my stuff, I was actually using this groove to route it in, and I realized you can't do that because this fits there. So it's got a cutout here for these center wires that come down through there. But I had to cut out an additional slot here, just the way the way I routed these. So I guess now that in hindsight, I'm thinking I should have brought them around outside this pole and outside this pole and brought it in. And same with this one, I guess I should have ran it more down on the outside. So it's not clear when you're doing all the wiring in many cases, and so you end up paying for it here when you install these panels. I'm going to have a bigger problem over here because I couldn't get all these cables through the cable pole. I should have done them first, and it's not clear in the instructions because of the big heads. So we'll get to that in the wiring section. You'll see that. So I'm going to have to also cut out some slots here as well in the bottom for that panel, the next panels, the left and right panels, to fit. This one should be maybe okay. We'll have to just have to do some be creative and cut out some slots for them. Okay, so for the bottom cover right, we need to install a couple of these 3D printed parts, and they screw in here with these flathead screws from the back side, and then so now we can install this cover on the unit. So let's get that done. Okay, before we install that the bin bottom plate, we got to do the next step, which there's two parts. This is a 3D printed part here, and here's another one. Make sure you get the right one for this step. This one has 45-degree angles on the base. This one is square. So the picture looks like it shows this one, and what it does is it's open on this side, and it shows this dropping down in there. It goes past that, and then I'll put in a M3 nut there, so the switch is right here. So we'll go ahead and get that in, and then it'll install, the switch will install on this bottom powder bin space in here, so we know when this is removed. So we'll probably do that in the next step as well. All right, so we ended up putting all the covers, bottom covers on, and also what they call as you can see in the step there, I guess these dust covers or whatever you want to call them, but you use these, it calls for M410, but it's actually, they should be M4.8s, and you've got these little M4 Teflon washers, so you put them on there so you can see these holes. So as powder collects from the process, this stays in there, and then when it's time to clean, you can slide these out. So you want these Teflon washers, tighten it up a little and then just loosen it so you get a good slide, and that's how those work. Now on the other panels that I mounted, so you'll see this in the wiring section, but I realize I crossed some of these wires through here, and they should have actually run up along the top here to the center, and so I had to cut out ports so I wouldn't pinch any of those wires. And then also, if you recall, when I put that panel on, I did the same thing for the cables here. Since I didn't go through the regular way because it's too big, I also cut out a channel there. So I'll probably put some tape over that as well to kind of just more for insulation. But that's that step. So you can see all the sliding covers now installed, and everything is good to go. All right, let's get started on the over powder bin. So we've got the front side here, and then you take a couple of these, what they call bin side connectors, and we attach these with M410. Seems pretty simple. Attach top and bottom. These parts look symmetrical. The holes look the same on all sides, so I don't see any difference. So I'm going to go ahead and get those put together. Go from there. Okay, so the next step then is to basically attach these 3D printed parts the way they're shaped. They're grooved in there, and they'll fit right in there, and one on each side. And basically I do the same thing, fix up this the same way I did the other one, and put that piece on there, those two tabs with the corners, and then we'll do the sides. So I'll just actually kind of do it all together, and just fast forward. There's nothing surprising here, so just keep up. All right, so you don't need to see me struggle getting these in, these tight PETG parts. So I'm just going to turn this off and show you the final. Okay, so I got the sides and the front and back together. This had been, I swear, the bottom of my palm is so sore. Just getting these screws into these 3D printed parts was difficult just because they're tight. God, if I was going to fab this on my own, I would do it in a couple metal pieces and bent for sure, and then some sort of, maybe a weld. All right, so as you can see, the next step then, I'm gonna flip it over, and this is the bottom piece, and it says to put some, seal it with the red silicone. So we're gonna go ahead and squeeze some red silicone on there, and then go ahead and attach the bottom. All right, so we're on the powder bin. I'm gonna finish this one up, and we've got the cover, and you'll see from the diagram that this top piece, this side is closer to one side, and this is the front, so it actually will move in like that. It says to put silicone, red silicone in there to seal it, so we'll go ahead and put that on and then drop that down and add the screws. All right, so this next step calls for this, it's called a bin lid extension, and then this bin lid rail here is next, and you can see in the instructions, this is the front of the powder bin, that this smaller tab right here then is to the right of the front of the powder bin, and that sits on top, and that screws all together with these M3 flat head screws. So I'll go ahead and get that then screwed up, and that part should be about complete before we install it. All right, so you remember when I installed this one, I put it on there, and the countersink holes were on this side, so even though I just subconsciously didn't look at the instructions, I just subconsciously mounted it because that's where the countersink were. And then when I went to I test fitted this just to see once it was all mounted up, I added the switch in here. I realized that when I push this in, that piece that activates the switch is actually on the wrong side. And I thought, well, okay, and I went back to the instructions, and it showed this side needing to be there. So I actually had to go, and I told Thomas, I said, it looks like you guys didn't get this done right. I went ahead and did more countersinks. My biggest concern is how much gripping I'll have with countersinks on both sides. So if it doesn't work out, I'm sure I can get another piece from Thomas. He's offered, but we'll go ahead and see. Just the stress of pulling this in and out, the gripping of this is important. But we'll face that hurdle when we get there. So we'll get this assembled up, and then get this back panel back on as well. I got a little couple rework to do on this as well. So we'll move on next steps. Okay, so after the powder bin is completed, then it just slides back in on that rail, nice and easy. Activates that switch back there, and then you just put in this little knurled knob, which is actually was a little difficult. So I ended up starting a hole with a different machine screw to get line, and then that was able to go back in there. So, all right, next step. All right, so adding the over powder bin was actually the final step of the bottom frame. So now we're going to get into the top frame part of this. And in the top frame, basically this is all the halogen heater components that go into the top, and then the covers, and and the wiring you have to do obviously for the halogen heaters. So that's what we're going to start next, is working on all those components that go into that top cover piece. Okay, so as you can see, the next step, it takes these R7S sockets here. They've got one wire coming out here, and they mount to the tops of each one of these brackets. And these brackets, there's two different types, angles. So for now, this just slides in there in that groove. There's a groove on these, and then you just tighten that screw down in there. And you don't need to over tighten. This is a thin aluminum, and so no need to get it stripped. So those are on there now then. So then this is complete, the step's complete. Pretty easy step, just be careful. Okay, so the next step, as you can see, takes these shields. They're 220 millimeters here, and they just take each one of these assemblies that you just did, and you're going to take these here, and you're going to mount them in here like this. like this, okay, where those line up. And so we'll get each one of those prepped and prepared. It takes the M46 socket head on this here. It takes 2 on each side, and we will prepare, since there's 2 sides, obviously we'll prepare 1 for each side. So we'll go ahead and get those mounted up per the instructions, and then we'll come back and show the complete. Okay, so I got these put together, and like I said, do not over tighten. You just touch it until it just hits that aluminum and tightens up. So now it takes these, what it calls the 185 out is what it's called. And these now will slip in between here and attach to there, as you can see in the instructions. So we'll go ahead and get both sides attached there. Okay, and there's the sides there. So the next one calls for the shield 220 here, and it looks like this part here. So the last part has these little grooves on the ends here. So these have the 2 screws, and it goes, this is the 220 side, so it looks like it mounts just on the inside here on those, and I'm not seeing how that goes right now. So it actually looks like it fits between there better. So let me take a look at what we got going on here. It may fit right here. It's not very clear right now, so I'll take a look at that and then we'll come back. Okay, so I looked ahead about 10 steps ahead, and you can see there's 2 different types of these side shields here. One's got this adjustable grooves, obviously. So the shield that it shows going here on this side, it looks like just like this piece. The problem is it's supposed to go in front of that. I'm not sure how well you can see it in there, and it's blocked. And you know, it can go, and nothing lines up. So then I realized, you know what, I think this is the groove piece, and when I read ahead, you have to adjust this piece so later, and there's a distance that it needs to maintain. So that's why this groove piece goes in this next step. So those go there, and then at the end, these other pieces will go here. So we'll go ahead and get all that assembled up as you see in the instructions. So I don't like the sequence of steps in order, because you got this plate on here that I just removed. You've got this sitting up here, and then now you got to put screws down in here, and you can't get that in there. It's all wonky. But if I take that plate off, then I should be able to assemble these much easier. So that's what I'm going to do. I suggest you also, but I would say insert these screws early in the process. I mean, even I wouldn't even say, I would say even attach them to these before you even get started on this, because then you can go in there with a and crank and loosen it with this. But because the length of this, it's just difficult. So that's what I recommend. Okay, so I've got the inner one. So the logic of assembly on this, I don't know. I'll have to call out Thomas on this one, because you install the outer ones per his instructions, and then the inner ones, and you can imagine just getting in here trying to get the right angle and everything on these screws is quite difficult. I'm not sure why he didn't do, so I pretty much took everything apart and I did inner and worked outer, and it was a lot easier. So I'm not sure why that's not in. Now these are adjustable. I don't have them totally tightened down. And once again, it's going to be difficult to even tighten them down. The good news is they kind of tighten by hand pretty easy, but I made these so they can slide in there. So anyway, just a reference. I think I'll tell you that in the order of operations, that start with the inner and go from there. So okay, we'll move on next step. All right, so the next step calls for this frame that we just put together to be put on this aluminum plate, and it looks like it goes on something like that, and it uses the Teflon washers in between this and that, and the M4 8 screws. And unfortunately, I have no more of these Teflon washers in my pack. All right, so before I ran out, looked for some washers. I sent a message to Thomas and asked him, you know, if I could use thicker washers because I couldn't find anything online. And he basically said, hey, the M4, there's some M4, they're only a 0.5 millimeter thick. There's 50 of them. He says, if you double those up, they should work. I would have preferred he said they will work, but there should be no reason. I mean, the Teflon washer, I mean, it's just, there'll be some heat transfer there, but I'm not sure there's, you know, I don't think it's going to be that much of an impact. So we're going to go ahead then and double these up and get this on, and then we'll go from there. All right, so just a little Teflon to stick the washers down, set that down in there, and then just get your screwdriver down in there and tighten up those M4A. Now, they do stick out a little bit on the back, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. But all right, so we can move on to the next step here. We're going to assemble the other ceramic heads on here, and they just insert in there. And of course, fortunately, they screw in from the front. Otherwise, that'd be a pain. So we'll take our ceramic heads here, and so I'll sit right in there. We'll get all those installed, and then we'll go from there. So a little interesting here, as you screw these in, I found that the screw that these initial ones we put on extended into this space a little bit. So I had to back these off just a bit, get those in there, and then slightly snugged everything up. So now that we've got all those in, we move on to the next step. Okay, so the next step requires a pair of calipers, and these parts that slide up and down that we installed earlier need to be, it says 79 millimeters. So that's from the bottom of the cover to the top of this. So I'm going to lock that side, and this is where the Allen key in this tight spot. It's the only way you're going to do it. So that end's tightened up, and then let me see on this end. Okay, so set that there, and I've got 79.02 on this side, and then this other side is at 79.03, 702. So, and it says when you're done, then all these edges should be flush, and they definitely feel flush. So, Allen wrench is your friend here. Get you one if you don't have one. All right, in this step, we just then go ahead and run a bead of red silicone everywhere it says to, and in this box, the corners and the sides. And I just usually take my finger and just smooth it down so it gets down into the grooves. It's like you would do for a regular caulk. Okay, and so now after we got that all sealed up, we added the insulation here. And you can see, it says, I don't have my gloves on, but you can see I cut grooves down in there to mate up with the thing. So did that on both sides where the hit the rail. And then it shows the wires coming out here, and as well as this coming out the bottom. So I know there's going to be a cover on there. I'll have to look ahead and make sure. I just want to make sure I got those out of the way. But that there's insulation added. So, okay, we're literally down to the last HPL parts here. Pretty exciting. So this here is the top bottom cover, and we oriented this is where the switch is going to go. We've oriented it up here, and then these are the connectors. So once again, these are not symmetrical, and the holes are close to this side, and per the diagram it looks like those are the ones that mount in. So we'll get those mounted up and come back and get ready for the next step. Okay, and the next thing is we got the safety switch holders, 3D printed part, and this the last switch that we work with. You can see how it mounts in there, and so I've already done this step. So then it's going to mount in this slot down here. So we'll get that oriented correctly on the top piece here. Okay, and then basically it shows it coming in here like this, and orient it down, and then it just sits down on it like that, and then it takes a couple M48, it says flathead, come up from the bottom. So we'll go ahead and get that mounted up, and this part here should be done. Okay, and it called for M4 flathead, but it's obvious that this is countersunk for the M38. So, all right, so we've got the safety switch in on the top cover. So we'll move on to the next step. Okay, and then we just sealed up any gaps with the red silicone around the safety switch. And now it says we can go ahead and get this added to the top cover. So we've got to connect the safety switch, obviously, to this before we assemble this. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, then we assembled this here to the top. Now, I have lots of words I can describe on the mounting of this thing. We still need to tighten down some of these screws, but just accessing this hole in here with the angle, you can't use it with the what he provides you. What I ended up doing was I got a 5mm Allen wrench and just was able then to get them started, and then this has the right length and angle. That's the only way you're going to be able to do it. If someone else has a better trick to get to it, I'm open to it, but it's almost impossible. It was very difficult. It's almost as difficult as it was actually getting to these down here on the top cover, because that was the same problem I had as well. So anyway, we've got that on, and now we can move on to the next step. All right, so now that we have all this mounted here and we've prepared the top cover, now we've got to make sure we get the leads. Now what it says is we're going to use these holes along the side here to feed our ceramic heaters here through. So just carefully bring those through, and then obviously one will go to blue and one will go to live, the brown wire that's coming out the top cabinet there. So that's and each one will have, so just need to make sure you keep track of it, but that's basically the thing. He shows a picture, but pretty self-explanatory on that. So I'll go ahead and get those threaded through, and then we'll get this up next to the cabinet ready to mount it. All right, so I've got all the wires and ceramic heaters fed through, and at the same time I've got my Wagyu one-on-one connectors ready to go on the heater, or the lines, the live and the neutral. So now it's time to get hooked up. So it basically shows that piece resting on here, and then also it tells me I'm gonna have to put a bead of red silicone there before I screw it up. But first we'll get the connections. All right, so the connections are pretty simple. All right, so there's one set of sockets here, right? So you want to make sure you have a live, a brown, all right, to a neutral, and you just go roll it. So this one is these two. So I have a neutral, live, and this one here, that's a neutral and that's a live. And then the last one is, this is neutral, and the inner one here is live. So like I said, it doesn't matter which order. It doesn't matter if I put this one, the live one, on this end and the neutral on the other end, as long as you have one live and one neutral on each end of that halogen socket. So all right, so now it basically says, and we're going to silicone this here. I'm going to lift this up. We got to tuck these up in there. Got to be careful. And it says to get them in there between the front cover, and then screw this in, the aluminum plate up into there. So we'll put the silicone on first, and then I'll get the wires kind of tucked where I need them, and I'll just go ahead and slowly lift that up there. The wiring, I think, is going to be the toughest part here, just making sure it's tucked out of the way. All right, when I say we got this installed, this is definitely a two-person job. So you sealed up that inside, and then you lift this up. Well, you got to tuck those wires. You don't have a lot of space over here. I had the biggest problem, so I had someone that was watching the wires as I was moving this out. These wires, I had a lot more space over here to kind of maneuver them. And then once I got that lifted up in there, like I said, it's a two-person job. And I made a mess with all the red silicone everywhere, but now it's in there. It looks good. Gosh darn it. We are so close, so close. So we just got some final things to do, but we're so close. All right, so now we just have to seal up the gaps on the top and top here and the bottom here, and just kind of trimmed it up, made it look nice on that profile. So, all right, so got that sealed up. So next step. All right, so the next step is to take this heat resistance fabric. It's self-adhesive, and you can see then from the instructions that we're just gonna go around the perimeter then, basically over these screws, and cut it to fit around there, both the top and bottom. So that's what we'll do next. All right, so then after we put on the tape there, then we add in this insulated tape on the top and the bottom here, and just cut it to round off and make it look nice. And then this little piece added here mates up with the switch, so when that drops down, it makes contact. And then, okay, so then the next step was, so then we added in the heaters, the halogen heaters, and you can see, I'm gonna zoom in on here. You can see how they're set in there. They're wide, and then they have that edge looking at you, and you want that edge looking at you, so the full exposure of the lamp is facing down. All right. We also added in this plate back here. We added in the glass. You hold it in there with the tape as well, and that's what's holding it in there. And then screw that back in there for the instructions. You can see the galvo mirrors looking at us right there as well from the top side. And folks, we are pretty much done. Then the last step was rigging up this. I did so many steps because I was getting close to the end. Connect these two 3D printed parts here, as you can see in the instructions there. And then essentially you hold those up there against this edge and tighten them up. Actually, it's upside down. I don't think it really matters. You tighten it up so it just fit, and then that way if someone comes out, they can't lift that up, and then it just easily pulls off. But it fits on there just snug enough to hold it, and it's all set. Now, the only thing I'm really waiting on, you can see I'm missing the galvo window. So you drop the window down in there, and with a little red silicone to hold it, so I'm waiting for that to dry. And then when this is done, then we'll take this and slide it in here. I'll activate that switch right there, hold that up, and this mirror will align with that hole in there and right above the galvo mirrors. So basically, once this dries in tomorrow, we'll put that in, and then we're ready to start initializing this thing, and that'll be a whole video on itself.